it's not about you. It is about the project, and sell the project, because that's what we're approving to be built in our city.
Welcome to the Archispeak podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. Each episode, Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and I have a casual conversation about all things architecture, and we invite you to listen in as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the blocks of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we stand around the water cooler and talk about why we love our chosen profession. It's time for some Archispeak.
Welcome to episode 73 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this episode of Archispeak is sponsored by Arcat. Visit them at arcat.com. And we'll have a little more to talk about them later in the show. And this episode is also brought to you by the Business of Architecture Summit. And we'll have a little bit more to say about that in the show. And to start us off tonight, Cormac had a topic about presentation that he wanted to prove how badly we are at this. So Cormac
wanted to prove it. I don't think...
I don't think we need to prove it anymore. That rushed intro was
no, it's late. Enough. That's why we got the rushed intro. So let's move on.
All right. So one of the cool things about the office I work at now, since it's employee owned, one of the things that they've tried to do is basically offer to everybody at the firm a way to, and see, this is kind of helping out the whole topic here, a way to basically become a better employee. And one of the things that they were offering is executive coaching, and particularly for us is presentation skills. Obviously, we all need some brushing up on presentation skills, or kind of a way to kind of understand our, I guess, how well or how poorly we give presentations and what we can do to make them better. What was interesting is this particular executive coach, he started talking about, all these different people that he's coached. A lot of them have gone on to do TED Talks, and he's, gave a bunch of examples through, examples with TED Talks on effective speaking and ineffective speaking and things like that. He said of all of the people that he's met and coached, some of the worst presenters and public speakers are, want to throw out a guess?
Architects.
And why is that?
He's like, for people who are so passionate about the work they do, they seem so, I guess for lack of a better term, there's no confidence in either themselves, or it's not, he says that it's not that we don't lack confidence and passion in what we do. It's, we seem to lack confidence in how we present what we do, or how we sell it, or that storytelling. And it was pretty interesting, because he went on and he was talking about, presentations are a way for you to connect with your audience, whether it be a new client or a review board or whatever. Trying to tell the story about what the project is. And he says that's usually where most people start to fail, is when they walk into the room and that kind of initial presentation that we give to somebody. And it's not the, hi, my name is Cormac Phelan, and I'd like to talk to you today about the schematic design package for this particular building.
Boring.
Right? Exactly. We already lost them anyway. And 9 times out of 10, where would I typically be looking? Probably at the slideshow and not at the audience. And, he was talking about different mannerisms on how we carry ourselves, and kind of the fallacy of, And because I had brought this up, I'm like, well, I've been told that I need to control my hands because, I'm a hand speaker. I talk with my hands. My hands are always moving around like they're doing it right now, and nobody can see them through the microphone.
Thankfully.
but and he's just like, oh, don't. He goes, here's the problem, is that you're now focused on your hands, and so you're losing track of what you're trying to say. And he was just like, he kind of pulled out a pen. And I'm going to encourage everybody to pull out a pen at this point in time.
Pull my pen out.
Pull your pens out. Got it. Now, if you're driving, don't do this.
Yeah, if you're driving, don't do this. So you hold your pen out, maybe arm's length, half arm's length, or whatever, and hold it in front of something else. And look at the something else through the pen. And the pen is blurry. You're focused on something else. Now focus on the pen. The thing that's behind the pen is blurry.
Wow, he figured out how eyes work.
No, what he's figured out is that there is it is physically impossible for us to focus on one thing at a time. More than one thing at a time.
Okay.
So, yeah, more than one thing at a time. Or in some cases, it's physically impossible to focus on anything. But his point is that if we're focused on our hands, then we're not focused on our presentation. And if we're if we're not focused on the presentation, it's going to be an ineffective, useless presentation. And it was kind of interesting. And he started, kind of talking about it. And so what I'd like to do for this particular presentation is get you guys' opinions on what do you guys think about, whether or not architects are good or bad presenters, and what are some of the things that you've done in the past to either become a better presenter or, done to completely avoid having to give presentations in general. Well, and since I know that one of us is a planning commissioner and another person is very good at public speaking, I'd like to get some input on it from somebody who, it was interesting is as we were going around and he was like, it was a small group and he was asking us, just our names and, just a little bit about us. Every single person, including me, had basically said, "Hi, I'm Cormac Phelan. I really don't like to give speeches or presentations." It was kind of like he's like, "Oh, well, so I guess I know where I stand here." So
you've admitted defeat before you've even started.
Exactly.
So Cormac, first off, before we jump into that, we keep talking about him. Who was him, and what company was this?
Okay,
if you recall.
Harrison Monarth.
Everybody tell. Okay, so sorry.
Harrison Monarth was the executive coach. He is the CEO of Guru Maker, and you can look him up at gurumaker.com. And Harrison has worked with and coached and has a team of executive coaches that has basically worked with CEOs of major companies. He's both trained and learned from, many CEOs. And he gave a few examples, and I won't bring their names up just because I don't think we've got the right to.
It's okay.
But and he's talked about how, you've had, there's CEOs out there that can, that you'd think that they're calm, cool, collective, and just kind of can deliver a speech, and they practice and practice and practice and practice. And what's interesting is how he works with our particular company is he'll come in and say we're getting ready to do a major presentation for some new university work, or we're going after and we're competing against other national firms and things like that. He'll work with us, and basically we'll have already developed our presentation that we're about to give to, Troxel University. And so, yeah, I just created a new university for you, Evan.
Thank you.
So we're, so he'll come in and we'll give this, our entire presentation to him. And then, basically as we're going through, he's like, well, what are the points are you trying to get across with this slide? You're showing this image. What is the story that you want to tell them from this image that you're on there? And they're like, well, I'm not sure. He's like, well, then get rid of it. If you don't, and he helps kind of streamline. But what it also does is, it helps teach us how to edit and basically streamline and recognize what's a good presentation, what are some issues. I always go back to that, my little adage of, if a contractor has questions, if you have, let me start that over again. If you have questions, then the contractor is going to have questions. Well, it basically works the same way in presenting. If you have questions about the information that you're trying to get across to somebody, sure as hell, somebody will have, bigger questions. Like, well, why should we hire this guy if he's not sure of what it is that he's presenting? So it was really interesting that, to learn a lot about what's good and bad. And, I say that, I hate presenting. And to be quite honest with you, if I have to stand up in front of a bunch of people, I, of course, get absolutely nervous about it. But, as long as I'm confident in the information that I'm giving, I can get through it. But what was pointed out, though, is there's getting through it and getting through it effectively where, they say, well, that I've got a decision to make between Cormac, Evan, and Neil, and Neil was the most persuasive. He communicated to us with eye contact. He was speaking directly to me. I felt like he was engaging me, and it wasn't just kind of talking at me, but talking to me, and really kind of sold the information that he was trying to tell me. And so I think between the three guys, I think I might go with Neil. And that was kind of what they were trying to do, is what is going to make your presentation, your sales pitch, essentially, more impressive and stand out more than the next guy. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're going after projects, we're competing against somebody else, and we're selling ourselves, and we're selling why this person wants to work with us. Not just, why is this person good right here in the 15 minutes that they're giving the presentation, but why do I want to spend the next 15 months, couple of years working with this person? And those were some of the interesting takeaways that I took. I've got a lot more, but I'd like to kind of open it up and talk about what you guys think.
Yeah, I think that I've also had the pleasure of working with a presentation coach, and she was very good at helping us simplify our message. Yeah. And I think a lot of times what it comes down to is the vocabulary that we use, because in school we speak with, and we're trained to speak to an architectural jury, and we go through 4 or 5 years of that. And then we work in an office where we speak with other architectural professionals, and we all speak the same language because we've all been trained in a similar setting. And so when we actually get in front of a client, we turn them off pretty quickly because they do not understand our language.
You mean Archispeak?
Exactly. And we talked about this the very first episode. We gave an example of Elizabeth Diller, who was reading from a page some Archispeak that she had written, and it was very well written. I mean, I don't want to put it down because it was
great.
It was one of those very deep thoughts that she had basically put into the design of this project, but at the same time, just listening to it, it doesn't just exactly flow out. And and this is something that we practice with our kids here in our house, is when they're reading, our kids read every day, and when they're reading and they get to a word they don't understand, they actually have to stop reading and look it up and understand what that word means before they go on. Because if somebody does not understand a word that they hear, it basically shuts your brain off at that point, and you don't hear the rest of the words after it. And so if we're presenting and we use a word like juxtaposition, or, a word that people do not use in everyday vocabulary for the most part,
they're going to be like, okay, wait, what does that mean? And how does that, that I don't even know if that's a real word or whatever. And now they're not hearing what you're saying anymore. And you've turned them off. And that's when we really lose that contact. I think that vocabulary thing's huge. And schools don't prepare us for this. There's no, the focus is all on the project, and it's secondarily on our presentation of our ideas. If we don't present those well, the project hopefully could still speak for itself. But there's typically not a critique of how we present it. Sometimes there is, but I think that's a disservice that's done through 5 years of presenting. We get good at presenting to other architects, and we don't necessarily get good at presenting to the general public, who is our main client after we graduate.
Exactly, and and he our coach basically did the same thing, whereas he said that so often, and he doesn't work with architects a lot, but he notices that when he coaches architects, that's the first thing that he notices, is that we are gifted and talented people that really know our stuff, but we are too busy giving presentations to ourselves and, trying to, I guess, prove to ourselves that we know all of this stuff, that we completely lose our audience. He brought up a great example from Jack Welch, from the CEO of GE. And basically, Jack Welch, his main topic was talk simply. And he, because he had asked him, he was like, what would you give as advice to other professionals as presentation, as, like your main presentation goal? He'd say, talk simply. Excuse me. So he would basically say that, he would have people who would come into his office and they'd just start basically, engineer babbling and stuff like that. And he would basically say, you know what, you're done. Get out, come back and talk to me when you can just lay it down as quick and as simply as possible. Because, when you sit there and you talk, basically when we're presenting in our Archispeak, we are, as you said, wasting the time, not only wasting their time because we've lost them. And, they're like, well, am I going to give it to the guy who started talking about juxtaposition in the interstitial spaces of this and that and the other? He goes, and, because as he was talking about it, I started writing down like additional words that I may or may not have known. And so that right there alone disengaged me from the conversation. And I thought it was interesting that, here's a multi-billion-dollar company, and the CEO, he showed a couple of clips of Jack Welch giving presentations and talks and stuff. And it was just simple talk. It wasn't unintelligible talk or anything like that. It was just really simple, straight to the point. He basically kind of outlined, what it was that he was trying to get across to you, and basically made those points and reinforced those points as he talked. What was another very, very interesting thing is he's like, what I don't understand about architects is they'll go into a presentation and say it's a presentation for, we've already got the job, but we're given a presentation for something else. He goes, you guys go in and
it's like you're interviewing again.
Yeah, it was like, he goes, you always go in there and you give all of these, you give a presentation on all of the things that you've failed to, you present okay, so here's a scheme right here and we've done this and that. And it really didn't work out very well because it didn't address this, and this. And then here's another scheme, and it started to address a little bit of the failings here, but then it failed here, and here. And now here's one that really kind of addresses and picks up all of the failures of this one, and I think it really works out well. And he's like, why do you guys do that? Why do you save the best for last? He goes, people don't have time for this shit. They just need you to like say,
we're showing our work. We were always taught to show our work, Cormac.
well, you know, and I told them, I was like, and that's how we're taught. We're taught to, you know, basically show that we've exhausted all of these avenues of approach to get to this point, and that, you know, we've, you know, oh, well, we thought of that, you know. So we're telling them ahead of time that we've already thought about all these different ideas to get to this one idea. He's like, well, then why don't you do it this way? Why don't you present the idea and then let them ask you if you thought of this? And then you bring it up and say, oh, yeah, well, we tried that, and here's some of the reasons why.
It becomes a conversation at that point. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Then we've left the presentation, and now we're engaging in, you know, dialogue and exchange of ideas, and now we're shredding and stuff. You know, now we're engaging them. And he's like, I've never understood why you guys do that. And I was like, you know, now that you're asking me, I'm not sure why we do it either.
Well, and I think it takes somebody from the outside to ask that question and to observe the shortcomings of why connections don't happen, right? If it's very hard, us working in it all the time, it's like that tunnel vision, right? And it takes, like I've talked about this before, when it's like you're so into what you're working on, and you just have to push your chair back and say, can you come over here and look at this? I need fresh eyes on this. And that is exactly what we need with our presentations as well, because we don't get that outside feedback as much as we should, and we don't really ask for it either.
Oh, no. Because, you know, I mean, sure enough, as, you know, I go through this class and, you know, he's talking about, you know, why do we save the best for last, and why do we have to, you know, go through all these arduous processes? Then we have a presentation to a client that came into town this past Friday, and how did we present to him? All of the process that led up to these ideas, and more of, you know, so, you know, we got so bogged down, it became such a long meeting. You know, it was 7 hours long. There was no reason for a 7-hour meeting when we could have probably condensed it into at least half. And there was a lot of information and a lot of different parts and pieces of the project that we needed to discuss. But did we really honestly need to, you know, drag it out that long?
Right. It does get long, and it's something that another thing that our presentations probably suffer from, which is boredom at that point.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, hey, this sounds like a good chance for a break here, because I want to talk a little bit first off about our first sponsor, but then I want to get into a little bit about, as a sitting planning commissioner, what I see from the other side, and then a lot of the things, mistakes I see. Yeah. So anyway, our first sponsor for this episode is ARCAT. Would you like someone to draw CAD details for you, create BIM objects for you, maybe even write specifications for you? How about if somebody did this all for you for free? ARCAT has already done this for you. Search the ARCAT libraries for these products and more, free of charge, and no registration required to download content. ARCAT has created a website devoted to you, the building professional, to find building product information fast and hassle-free. Check them out at arcat.com today, and that's ARCAT.com. And thanks to ARCAT for sponsoring Archispeak.
Got a quick little ARCAT story. I actually saw somebody in the office using ARCAT, and I walked by, or I was actually sitting there. They pulled up ARCAT, and they said, "I did this for you, man."
Gotta love
they
it.
listened to the podcast.
Awesome.
And
That's awesome.
They
works.
They remembered the challenge, which was to give up Google searching for product, and they went straight to ARCAT, searched for it there, and I thought that was pretty cool. So something definitely worth giving a try if you guys are out there looking for products for your building, specifications, or details, anything that has to do with your project. Check it out at arcat.com, and it pulls that information right up. It comes straight from the manufacturers. It's not like they're going out and digging it up and editing it. It's coming straight from the manufacturer, so you're getting their stuff. And it's a great resource. So I really appreciate ARCAT for sponsoring, but also, I mean, it's the reason that we like them so much is because they're offering a great resource to our profession. So check it out.
Great. So as a planning commissioner, everything you talked about earlier, I definitely see. As far as what you mentioned earlier, Cormac, about the slides, so often the slides that we see are essentially the same drawings that are in the packets we receive, right? I mean, that's essentially all they do. And I know they're doing it to make things easy and fast, but here's the biggest problem. Look, when you're doing your slides, you're looking at them from 12 to 18 inches away. They're on your screen. Everything looks great. You can totally read it, right?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. You're forgetting that I sit 20 feet away from where this slideshow is going to be shown up on a screen. And regardless of how big it is, I can never see it. It just, it's difficult to see. So one thing I would recommend if you're doing a presentation in front of a commission or city council or your client perhaps, and they're going to be sitting across a room from 10 or 20 feet away, look at your presentation from that distance. Can you read the text? Can you understand the drawing that is on this slide? And go back to the very same question that you mentioned earlier. What am I trying to show with this slide? If you're just trying to show context of the site, then make it very clear that that's all they need to know. Spend some time and edit your slides or edit your drawings so that you wipe away some of the irrelevant information. And not just take your site plan that you got from your civil engineer that has all this information that nobody cares about, and you just throw it onto your slide. Okay, there it is. There's the slide. Because what that says to me is you've spent no time to deal with communicating with me, and I'm the one actually making the decision. So if I don't know what you're doing, and if I can see that you're not paying a lot of attention and or care, then I become disinterested. And if I'm disinterested, that you're losing me. You're losing my vote. And so the other thing I'd say too is when you're giving these presentations, and it's something we haven't really touched on tonight yet, but the thing that really drives or that can really grab my attention, and I've done this before, and I've witnessed it before, and I've witnessed the opposite too, which is being passionate about your presentation. If you're genuinely excited and passionate about what you're talking about, and you're not just getting up there and droning off, yes, okay, here's these elevations, yeah, and then here's the plan one, and there's plan two. It's like, oh, shut the hell up. Move on. It's freaking 9 o'clock at night. I don't want to be here any longer than I need to be. The point is, be passionate. Show the information that is important. I, as a commissioner, I've probably seen your elevations. Now, if there's something about them you need to show me that you're meeting the the view corridor, or you're meeting some criteria that the city that you're asking for, say you're asking for some sort of variance that you need, show me that information. Don't riddle me and just bore the hell out of me, and tell a story if you can. I mean, one of the most effective presentations I've seen on the Planning Commission that to this day, even still, I remember is there's an old dairy farm in the town I live in, and it's no longer a dairy farm, but it's an historic site. And a church bought it, and they were going to build this giant 8,000 square foot building there, and then they decided to go back and change this, and they're going to build 3 smaller buildings. They're going to start smaller. And anyway, the most effective thing they've done, I mean, some of the things they brought in, like a little 4x5 folded out handout of the history of the site and kind of how their project would tie into the history of this site. They brought us, since it was a milk dairy farm, they brought us actual, like, little marketing old style milk caps and gave them out. And they really pushed and told a story about what they were trying to do and how this fits in with the site, how they were going to use the old materials from the existing buildings to side their building with. And they really they told, I mean, they're doing nothing like to start the project. Right now, their education classrooms were going to be nothing more than trailers, essentially. But they told the story about how they were going to detail the trailers, how they were going to create this like silo, which was a play area, and turn it into, make it look like a little, little farm, sort of, touching in with the history, how they were going to create a little, one of the old buildings, they were actually going to turn it into like this little museum thing for the project that keeps the history. And so they were telling this story, and it was just like, wow, this is great. I mean, what a fantastic project. And they were asking for something different than had already been approved. So they really had to sell it. And they did. They did an effective job of doing that. And there wasn't a slide that showed up that wasn't up there telling a part of their story to get their project approved. And so I see so often people just getting up there and droning on, showing us, needless information, or just generally not being very excited about the project. Now, I know sometimes it's late. It might be 10, 11 o'clock at night, and you're getting up there. But have that enthusiasm will really get you a long way, whether it's in front of a commission or a city council or just in front of your client. If you're excited about your project, they're going to be excited about the project.
And that's your job.
And that is your job. Exactly.
It's totally your job at that point, is to get them on your side. And I agree with the storytelling, because there's really not a better way to get somebody on your side than to have them somehow become part of that story.
Exactly.
Or enable that story to become a reality for the town, or for the area, or the group that they represent. I mean, there's so many different layers that we have to deal with as architects when we're dealing with the public or our clients. But if you can help them become a piece of that, then of course they're going to be on your side. I mean, who wouldn't want that to happen? That is a connection at an emotional level that is so much better than just ticking off the boxes. Yes, we meet the zoning requirements. Yes, we meet the setback requirements. Yes, we meet the... And it's like, well, of course, you have to do that. But at the same time, like, that is that type of information that is not going to win anybody over. I mean, that doesn't make a compelling argument or a compelling story. You've got to somehow personalize it and make it meaningful to them personally. That's super important part of what we do. And I agree back with what Cormac was saying earlier, too, about selling. I mean, I've heard people say that I don't believe design is selling. I don't believe architecture is selling.
It's very much so.
It totally is. I mean, you have to be persuasive in what you're trying to get done. Again, it is your job to get it done, and you don't want to lead people down a path and represent something in the wrong way. You want to do it in a way that they want to go along with, and you have to figure out the right way to lead them down that path. And so that's why those slides that back up what you're saying are so important, and they have to mean something. They can't just be up there for no reason.
A funny little story. One time on the planning commission, this architect is getting up and he presents this project, and he goes through all of his slides and everything, and then you get to the last slide, and this is something that I'd recommend for anybody. Think about what that last slide is, because that is going to be most likely the thing that hangs up there on the screen for the rest of the debate that may be going on the commissioner or
right.
city council, right? I mean, that's the last thing, and it always just hangs up there. It just sits there, and if it's something that is not representative, or say it's just like your last slide of your, say, last building elevation or something, it just sits there. And so think about what that last slide is. So this guy, to his credit, he thought about what the last slide was going to be. But what was the biggest, most dominating thing on this last slide? You want to guess what it was?
A cow.
His name. No, this is not the dairy farm project. It was a different project. His name was the last. Oh, I'm sorry. So this was a different project, but his name was the biggest thing on the slide. And then, like, down at the bottom, very, very small, was like the project name and the owner's, the developer's name or something. But like his name was the biggest thing on the slide. And I'm like, really, dude?
That's awesome.
I was like, I'm ready to not vote for this project just because you're an asshole. I swear.
Wow.
I'm sorry. That made
did he do a good job in presenting?
No, he was so cocky. He was a dick. Oh, sorry. Edit. Sorry. No, he was a real jerk, actually. And so when he got to his last slide, I was actually not really surprised of what I saw, because he was kind of a real condescending jerk. And
I'd like to close this with Team Me.
Yeah. Exactly. But that was like his last slide, and it stayed up there for the whole time, and it just kept irritating me. I was like,
lingering, yeah.
Lingering, yeah. It very much lingered. It's like, I am the important thing here, not the project. And it's all about me. And it was like, dude, it's not about you. I mean, it's about the project. And again, I'm looking at it from the eyes of being on this case, the planning commission, and approving or not approving a project. So the important thing here is not you. I mean, you are a local architect. You may be known in the area or something, but you're not Frank Gehry or somebody else. You're not anybody famous per se. It's just it's not about you. It is about the project, and sell the project, because that's what we're approving to be built in our city.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this guy's known in the area, and you were talking about the famous
he might be known. He wasn't that famous.
Well, but I mean, you were talking about the star architects, and
I was alluding to
it's
that.
interesting because you wonder how they give presentations, because one of the things that this coach was talking to us about is he was talking about this earnestness of connecting. When you're delivering your message, you're trying to have this message this story that you're telling resonate with everybody in the room. And I've seen a few Star Architects presentations, both on project-specific items and also, in general, of their body of work. And the ones that really spoke to me were the ones who basically kind of pulled you into the story. They were trying to have you be a part of their journey as an architect, rather than them kind of expounding some, infinite knowledge that they have, that it's them and only them kind of thing. And I watched one in particular give a presentation for a memorial in DC, and he came across so incredibly arrogant that it was just so off-putting to both the council and the audience that it's just like, well, this is the only solution, so I don't know why you guys are thinking that there's anything but this solution right here. And you're just like,
there's a line between confidence and cockiness.
Exactly. And this particular project drug on for, now going on a couple of years, to be quite honest with you. In fact, we talked about this particular project in that particular presentation probably in either our first or second episode 3 years ago. And it just recently got approved. And so, it's just interesting that, that you bring up this storytelling. And that was one of the biggest points that this guy was trying to make to us is you're trying to tell a story. You're trying to resonate with the people that you're giving this story to. You're trying to make them a part of this story and why they can see both either their client or themselves within this building and what it's going to do to basically enrich their lives and stuff. And
you have to know who that audience is too,
right?
If you're telling them something that they're gonna snooze through, I mean, you've got to do research. You've got to find out what kind of questions they ask people. There's so much you can do to find out who your audience is, so that you can tailor that story and tailor that message to the exact people sitting in the room.
Evan, when you mentioned doing your research about them, I mean, again, coming from the perspective of being a planning commissioner, if you're giving a presentation and if you have the opportunity or you have the ability to do a little bit of research about who they are, and it may even be, something beyond just an internet search, but talk to the planners, talk to the people at the city. Hey, what are the What are some of the planning commissioners or city council? What's the hot issues? What are their their things they care about, and talk to those things.
Yeah, say,
right?
Look at the person and
Look
say,
at the
I know
person.
you're going to like this, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
How did you know? Because I know you. You know, that
Right.
that talks volumes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if in our case, me being an architect on the planning commission, if you come up there and you show us some garbage drawings or things that are just wrong or inconsistent when I'm looking at your plans don't match your elevations, weird stuff like that, guess who's going to call you out on it?
You just see right through it.
I see right through it. Yeah. And I'm really shocked at the garbage sometimes that is given to us, and all due lots of credit to our planning staff here in the city I live in. They know this. And there's actually been one time where they struggled with this particular client for a while to try and bring up their drawings to a certain level. And but at some point in time, there was nothing they could do. It's like we're meeting the standard of the bare minimum. And go for it. This is what we are going to submit. We're not going to do anything more. And unbeknownst to me, this was not said to me, but I got the material. I started going through it. I was like, this is crap. And I called them out in the meeting. Now, I wasn't trying to be, I was trying to be respectful, but I phrased it as, if I'm looking at your drawings and I am a trained professional and I can't understand what's going on, you have a problem. Because I guarantee you the other people on my commission, they're not trained. They don't know what they're looking at. I mean, they can't dive into it with my expertise. And if I'm struggling, then you're not communicating your message. Ultimately, that's the point. You have a message, the drawings, the presentation is trying to communicate that message. And if you're failing, you're not going to get the project approved. And actually, in this case, I did call them out and said, I can't understand this stuff. And I kind of saw this nod from the city planning department, like, yeah, and to their credit, they came back later. It was like maybe a year later or something, but they came back and the material they submitted was much better. It was much easier to understand. So it does help. And they got their project approved, but they got denied the first time. So it's critical to know your audience and know who's up there on the commission or the city council, and know what their interests are. Go to the biggest thing I would suggest is go to a few meetings prior. A lot of city councils you can watch online. So watch some of those, get to know them, and know what their issues are, and I think that'll be a big help. And one thing that could probably help you do some of that is, I think, going to be our next sponsor.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about the Business of Architecture Summit that's coming up in a couple of weeks. This is the last time that we're going to get to talk about this on the podcast. And I know there's a lot of architecture firm owners who listen. And we think this would be something you might be interested in. So check this out. There is this year's Business of Architecture Summit. It is the event that Chicago architect Frank Heitzman called the most profitable 2 days he spent in a long time. During these 2 days, you'll rack up 12 AIA learning units and hear from leading thinkers on how to run a sustainable, competitive practice. It's being held at the end of the month. That is October 29th and 30th online. And since the event is virtual, all sessions will be recorded and available for all participants. So if you can't be there in person online, you can watch it later as long as you've signed up beforehand. You have to sign up before the deadline. The seminar topics include how to productize your services and boost your project profit by 12% or more, and think like a developer, how to win more projects, improve the built environment, and have more fun with every project. So how do you find out more about this? Go to businessofarchitecture.com/Archispeak to reserve your spot. And if you go to that link, we get credit for that, and that allows us to pay the bills here at Archispeak. So if you think that this seminar might be for you, please go to that link and sign up, and we really appreciate the Business of Architecture for sponsoring this show of Archispeak. All right, so something that I want to bring up, a very simple premise is practice. Because something that I've talked a little bit about before, this is a funny little quote from Jerry Seinfeld in one of his stand-up routines. He says, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking, and number two is death. Death is number two. He says, does that sound right? This means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. That's
all right.
How many times have we seen that utter fear on the face of the speaker? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in school, if you're out of school, if you've been practicing for 20 or 30 years. If you don't do it enough, I mean, it is a scary thing, and it doesn't mean it's a scary thing for everybody, and it doesn't mean that it's easy for everybody. I mean, I remember hearing stories about actors who, before they say action, they're like throwing up in the bathroom because they're so nervous, right? And it's the same thing with like live music. The only reason those songs sound so effortless, or the reason that the athlete makes it look so easy, is because they've done it so many times, right? And my favorite presenter has got to be Steve Jobs, when there's case study after case study that shows how many times they work the message and are constantly editing and whittling that down to the exact thing that they want to say, so that it is second nature when it actually comes out. And I know there's a lot of architects, and I know there's a lot of architects listening right now who say, I never need to practice. I'm better when I don't practice. And that might be right for a few people, but I definitely don't think that that's the majority. And I feel like this is probably one of the things that most people miss. I know students don't do this because, quote unquote, you never have the time. It's the same thing in professional life. If you don't actually take the time to practice, it is not going to come out right the first time, most likely.
And you're gonna, you may not get that job.
Yeah, it's a lot of work that you put into these things to not get the job, too, right?
Right. There was one thing that Neil was talking about, in some of the presentations that are given to him, and it was something that we had touched on in this class. And you were talking about editing the slides and making sure the text is right and that you can read it. And I kind of was like, no text. And that was actually, one of the things that, he brought up. He's like, 9 times out of 10, if you've got text on your slide, what have you done? You've lost your crowd, because you're going to be looking up, trying to read the slide. They're going to be looking up, reading the slide, and no one's really listening to each other.
Right.
And so the conversation should really be had as the slides. If you've got slides, they're really just a prompt for the story. And, he gave, so as part of this class, before he came in, we were supposed to put together a real quick 5-minute presentation. It could be on anything. And since I'm the new guy there, I really haven't given any presentations at the office. So I was like, well, let me pick a project out of my portfolio and let me go ahead and put that in and do a real quick presentation on that particular project. So I was, throwing together some slides and stuff like that. And of course, I'm throwing in text. And sure as the day is long, here I go. I start the presentation and I look back at the slides and I start to read a slide. More just to kind of like, at first I thought I was going to use it as a prompt and just let it, then flow from there. Because here I am listening to all of the things. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know I've got some text in there, but I'm going to just breeze past it. Nope. Just because I was up there with a little bit of stage fright, and I reverted back to, let me use the slides as a crutch.
Did a loud buzzer go off?
Oh, no. Nobody could get through their presentation. He basically right? was like, I don't really want to hear the presentation. I actually want to see how you give the presentation.
Okay.
And he goes, I could tell in the first 2 minutes exactly how the presentation is going to go, just by whether or not you connect with us, or whether or not you are trying to engage us, or telling a story, or you're using things as a crutch. And 9 times out of 10, we were all using the crutch, or I was using effective voice. My inflection was, loud enough, and, or was even tone, and it was a good delivery vocally, and, I was, doing eye contact. But then, then he did notice, he goes, yeah, you do use your hands an awful lot. He goes, and I'm not telling you to not use them, but I am trying to tell you to use them effectively, and it's just like, rather than kind of like pointing up at the slides and then kind of using my hand, I was like continuously pointing up at the slides as I'm talking. So everybody's more looking at the slides than listening to what I'm saying. And so it's just like, you're not going to be able to control that, but what you're going to be able to do, or you're not going to be able to stop it, but you do need to learn how to control it and use your hand gestures correctly, use them as emphasis or use them as something else. And he goes, that's just something, as Evan, just said, practice.
Yep.
But
you don't want your hands in your pockets either, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, he said
body language is huge.
Body language is very huge.
You don't want your arms folded.
He goes, it is okay. And it was actually funny because there was a guy in there who's like, I usually like cross my arms, and he goes, people usually have, I come off as, kind of like guarded and standoffish. And so he gave a couple of different examples. So, guys clearly skilled at, at coaching and presenting, because he gave a couple of examples. He goes, there's this kind of, giving a presentation with your arms crossed, and he crossed his arms. And then he goes, and then there's this one. And then he gave a different, scenario. And one was, kind of a little bit like earnest and kind of really almost inviting, even though his arms were crossed. And then the other one was very foreboding and standoffish. And, and it was just like, wow, it literally, you can tell the difference in just the way that your posture and your, the way that you kind of deliver it. And even like, the tone of your voice. So you got your arms crossed, but, maybe the tone of your voice is just a little bit different, a little bit softer to, kind of like, tell him that you're almost giving him a hug rather than, and it was pretty amazing how and so I've been actively watching other people as they give presentations, either to pick up cues or just see if there's anything that I notice as a bad habit, I guess you can call it. And it's interesting that there's a confidence in knowledge that usually helps a lot of us architects get over the presentation kind of blunders that some of us do. And then there's we're confident in our information, but we're not very confident in, just our body mannerisms, or we just don't have, feel very confident in ourselves. And so then we kind of revert to more of this kind of like guarded presentation where we're, more, we think, it's almost like I gave the example of, it's the way that men, how most men think that they can't dance because everybody's staring at them and judging them, kind of thing. And that's a way that, a lot of architects or people in our profession give these presentations. Like, they're looking at me, they're judging me, they're ooh, oh, somebody just wrote something down, and what does that mean? Do they not like me? Did they just write down, boy, this guy is a really bad presenter? So
do they make sketches like you do in meetings?
Well, that's proof right there that they're not engaging the client.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, something that I've thought about with the whole word debate on the slides, I definitely agree. There's kind of two extremes to that. There's the side where we've all been in presentations. I mean, back to school night, this is one of the worst offenders, right? Which is like, there's 300 words on the slide, and they're all in Comic Sans, and they're all in 6-point font because they all had to squeeze onto there. And then the teacher just reads the whole thing, right? I could have done that on my own. And then there's the other extreme, which is no words, because we don't want our people we're presenting to read the slides. I kind of find that there is actually a happy medium here, and it's few words on the slide, but they can be a lifesaver for you as the presenter to remember what to talk about. And I don't think that that's bad at all. I mean, if you are now supposed to talk about energy or sustainability, that can be a word on a slide that just cues you, like, this is what's next. Because we do not remember all of the slides in the deck. We don't remember what order they're in necessarily, because something that was pointed out to me, I thought this was a funny anecdote, was we are out of our minds when we are on that stage presenting in front of people. We literally cannot keep time and all of our talking points and remember everything right to say and to make the eye contact and the body language and how to stand and what to do with our hands and how to engage the people. We can't do it all. And so you need those cues to pull it back into focus. And I think that it's fine if they are reading the same word as you say it. Sustainability. Okay, let's talk about sustainability next.
Right.
And if you get off topic, just be honest and say, "Oh, I'm getting off topic here. I'm gonna get back onto my outline." And that is okay. Like, you do not look like a stupid idiot when you do that.
Right. In fact, and and that was a point that he made, is like, you may start to tell a story and you may wander a little bit, but then realize that and snap back to, getting back on topic
and say it. I'm off on a rabbit trail here. Let me get back onto the right.
And then they're just
outline.
like, and then they're like,
because honestly, they're thinking the same thing.
And they're like, "Oh, you're a real person."
Yeah.
right.
But that helps. That helps you. That helps bring you in and helps. What'd you say?
You just refocus it, right?
Well, no, but it touches you, or brings you into that story, right?
Yeah,
right. Telling, and engages you.
And engage. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
But then, as Evan was just saying, is it makes you, actually both of you just said, it makes you a little bit more human. They're like, oh, I kind of have those same problems. Sometimes I wander on my conversation, but it endears you to them a little bit more. They now say, they connect with you a little bit more. It's like, oh yeah, I've had those problems before, and it's a better way to kind of engage, as kind of making it real.
So, Cormac, did he mention practicing in front of a mirror or anything like that?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and actually, let me give this real quick shout out to one of our big listeners and also one of our great friends of the show, Rosa, because he started talking about power posing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And he actually said that he had given presentations where he's seen presenters, then they did a study that people who give presentations and they just, kind of relax before seem to go into it a little less confident than people who just stop just for 2 minutes. Maybe it's in the stall of a bathroom or it's somewhere, out of the way or view of people, that they just, for 2 minutes, just kind of power pose and just do their little superhero pose and just kind of amp themselves up and feel a little bit more empowered with themselves. That they go out there and they do a much better, more confident,
better. Yeah.
Yes. And they said that there's been studies on that. And
you know what I do sometimes when I'm going into that.
Hear this.
Oh, come on! It's a family show. No, before going into a meeting like that or something like that, I listen. I like to, as I'm going into the car, as I drive to my meeting, right, to the planning commission meeting. If I know I've got a big project and very controversial, 100 people in the audience, it's going to be a big mess, or a presentation like this, right, or an interview or something like that, I like to listen to music to get me in the right frame of mind, or that pumped up. That
Eye of the Tiger?
Series. No. You know what I like to listen to? Eminem's Lose Yourself. I think that's what the title is. Lose Yourself, the song from the movie.
Yeah.
I love that song. It's just
listen to Journey. Nice try.
No. Well, I do, but not that. No, not for that reason. No, but it's just a song that makes me think about the story of the movie, of course, and then just you're practicing. You're I don't know. It just gets me amped up and focused.
Yeah, you got to find that thing that works for you, right?
Yeah, and it does, and that's just what I do. I like to do that, but other people probably, if you've got your own song or your own thing, let us know. Tweet us, leave comments on our Facebook page. Let us know what you do to get yourself focused and amped up, or if it's the power pose, let us know.
I think something else that helps too, besides practicing in the mirror, is record yourself, either video or audio.
Yeah,
there's people that I know who, when you're just talking to them, they talk like a normal person. And then when they get in front of people, they talk like the smartest person in the world. And it is two completely different people. But when that happens, they don't even realize it's happening. And it's because they don't record themselves and listen back and realize the words that they're using. And it was funny because our presentation coach, we had somebody like that on our team. And she was like, who talks like that? Nobody talks like that. Stop using those words. Those are crazy words. Nobody uses those. And there are people who do that when they get in front of other people, and it becomes habit at some point, and it's so much so that they don't even realize they're doing it. And the only way that you're going to do that is if you actually take it really seriously and record yourself. I mean, this is what pro athletes do, right? This is how you develop a golf swing or learn to swing a bat or any of those things. You have to watch the mechanics behind it. And it's the same thing when you're speaking and you have body language, and you have to think about all of these different things. The only way you're going to get where you need to be is to practice. And the only way you're going to know what you need to fix is to actually see what you're doing.
All right, one last thought.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that whole pen trick and the whole, your brain can only focus on one thing. He told a real quick story about, basically stage fright and how typically, so we've got the prehistoric portion of our brain, the amygdala, and, usually that's what kind of has the out of control emotions. It's what kind of like controls you and kind of gets you like all nervous and everything else. And then, you've got your frontal lobe that is your thinking brain. And so since you can really only focus on one thing, what he was saying is that you kind of need to you've got to take control from the amygdala and take control real quickly so that your thinking brain can kind of take over, and it kind of helps you calm yourself. And he says one of the easiest ways to do that is to acknowledge some of the emotions that you're feeling. Not out loud, so just think to yourself, I'm, really nervous. Well, say to yourself, oh, I'm really nervous. What that does is it gives that real quick break in your emotions to let your thinking brain take back over. And it kind of helps calm you into getting kind of away from that kind of stage fright. And, so I was telling a parent at my son's soccer game this past Saturday, because I know that he's a neuroscientist. And he's like, that's exactly it. He goes, the problem is that so many times people get angry and upset and all this other stuff. Well, it's your amygdala that's kind of like controlling you. And it's those people who can stop, take that deep breath, and just kind of regain focus that typically are the most effective speakers and stuff. He goes, you would see, it's amazing how little people actually know that there's real science behind stage fright. And, I told him about the pen idea, and he goes, you know what, that's amazing, because that's really it. You really can only think of one thing at a time. As much as we want to think that we're these multitaskers, you really can only effectively focus on one thing. And the one thing that I want to focus on is wrapping it up.
All right. Well, I think I can take us out with that. If you have questions or comments, visit the website at archispeakpodcast.com. There you'll find links to our individual Twitter accounts and the Archispeak Podcast Facebook page, so you too can join in on this conversation. And if you have any interesting tips or things you want to share concerning presentation skills, give us a call at the Archispeak Podcast line at 415-484-8496.
I want to hear presentation horror stories.
Oh, ooh, yeah, that's good too.
I'd love to hear like how wrong it can possibly go.
Oh yeah,
that would be fun.
Oh yeah, I want to see. Yeah, that's the challenge. That's a challenge for this episode. We want to hear from you guys. I mean, we keep talking about it. 415-484-8496 and share those things. And also too, I think that's it. Actually, no.
And also
nothing.
Nothing.
And no.
That's when
come back to me.
Cormac does Evan will do the screech of the record, and the show's over. All right, everyone, stay subscribed, and thanks for listening.
Good night.
Good night.